Everybody, this is Jason with devslopes.com, and in this video we are going to add this welcome text to our site in addition to this carousel. So what's cool is this text up here. This is actually a Bootstrap component. It's called Jumbotron. It's just a larger text that's a little bit heavier, so you can introduce your website here. So let's go ahead and head over to Bootstrap to get things started off here. Alright, let's head over to Bootstrap 4, and then we're going to again dive into the documentation, and then this is going to be under components, and then it's going to be right here in about the center. It's called Jumbotron. So as you can see, Jumbotron is a lightweight, flexible component that can optionally extend the entire viewport to showcase key marketing messages on your site. So they got a couple of examples here. So they've got this introduction with some leading text that has a button. This could be a call to action of some sort. And then down here, this is what we're going to be using. We just want a nice bold text here with some smaller leading text here at the bottom. All right. So go ahead and copy that and head over to brackets. And we've got our nav bar here. And before we add our Jumbotron text here, let's make sure that we've got everything wrapped up in a container just to keep all of our content together. So we're going to put this in a container fluid. That way it expands the full width of the browser here. And go ahead and cut the last closing div tag of the container, and we're just going to throw it right under the closing nav tag. All right, and then go ahead and clean that up a little bit. Alright, so right under our nav tag is where we're going to add our Jumbotron text. So you can go ahead and, I lost my paste here. Let's add it right here. Alright, so, and what I had here is just a really cool utility here just called copy clip. Just allows me to keep track of all my copy and pastes so I can do multiple at a time. So we've got our Jumbotron text here. Let's go ahead and just launch this and see what it looks like. Alright, so very cool. We've got some large text, and it looks like it's added a gray background to this. Let's go ahead and inspect the elements so we understand what's happening here. So you can see that the Jumbotron has its own container of a Jumbotron fluid, and then nested inside of that actually has its own container. So we've got our core container fluid holding all of our content together, but the way Jumbotron works is they actually want you to add an additional container inside of this class to help with the resizing of the content. All right, and then if we dive into this header 1 here, you can see it's got a Bootstrap class of display 3, and over here to the right we can see that this display 3 is actually making this header 1 bigger by increasing the font size and adding a heavier font weight to it. All right, go ahead and select the Jumbotron fluid container here, and let's scroll down and see what else is happening here. So right down here you can see that we've got this background color, which we don't want. We want to add our own background color. So it looks like what we're going to do here is we actually want to grab the Bootstrap class of this Jumbotron, and we want to add a few more of our own stylings, like to get this thing centered, and we're going to remove Bootstrap's background color that they've already added onto this. And let me show you how we're going to do this. So first of all, we're going to dive into our CSS, and I'm going to split my screen here so we can see both ends what's going on. So let me open up this and drag in my CSS over to the right side. So go ahead and grab the Jumbotron class here. I'm going to copy that, and then over here we're going to add it. All right, and the first thing we wanted to do is get our text to be centered. So we're going to add a text align of center, and then we saw that we had a background color that we didn't want. So go ahead and do background color, Actually, in this case, to override it, we're going to have to set this to just background, because technically there isn't a background color that equals none. Background color has to be a background color. So to override it, all of it in general, we're just going to do a background of none. All right, and then go ahead and save that. Let's come over to the browser and refresh and check that out. We have added our own Jumbotron properties here to align the text and to remove that background. So this is looking much better. Let's go ahead and change the text to something cool. So back into our text editor, the main message, we're going to write, "Welcome to my world." All right, and then the leading text here, go ahead and get rid of that, and we're going to say, "Total radness since 1987. Sweet. So very cool. Let's come back over here, refresh. Good. All of our changes are taking place. I dig it. All right, so let's move into building this carousel. So when we think about adding the next part of this, the carousel, we know if we come to our website, let me show you here, that this part here is kind of like a section of its own, right? So when we look at this, we can kind of see this as we've got this section with a giant row here, and we've got our Jumbotron text in here. And then if we visualize it, this part down here could actually be its own row, again, stacked beneath the first one with 3 columns, because we've got an empty column here, we've got a center column with our carousel, and then we've got an empty column over here. So in brackets, let's go ahead and add that. So we're going to create a div with a class of, I'm going to call this section light, because in this section is going to be our lighter background, and then in the next section when we add contents, it's going to have a darker background. So open this up, and then inside of here, go ahead and add a row. All right, and then directly nested inside of this, what we're going to have is a column of 12. So we're going to add a div class of column small 12. All right, and then open that up. And what we want is, this is where we're going to throw our Jumbotron message in here. So go ahead and cut that and then throw it right into this column of 12. All right, and the reason we're doing this is we've already centered our text and everything, and we're saying we want a column of 12 on any viewport that is small and larger. Okay, we don't need to break up the Jumbotron text into different columns. We just need it in one column that takes up the entire width of the viewport. So right under this row that contains our Jumbotron text, let's go ahead and create a brand new row that's going to contain our carousel. So we're going to do a div class of row, open this up, and we're going to add a div class of column. So remember, we've done this before, that anytime we want to add just kind of center content, what we've been doing is we've used the call class, which says, hey, I'm going to take up any of the extra width here, any of the extra column space, and divide that up evenly. And then inside of here is we can create our column width of 6, where we're going to throw our carousel in. So we've got a column, and we're going to do a medium 6 and close that off. This is where our carousel is going to be. And then to make sure that this column width of 6 is right in the middle for us, go ahead and add that div class of column. So now we've got a column class of 6, and what we're saying is these column class, they're going to take up any extra column width space evenly, and so it's going to give us a column width of 3 and 3. And then when the viewport gets to a mobile state, like extra small, these will actually completely collapse for us. And then in the center here, we now are going to want this to be a column width of 12 on a small viewport. So when we get to mobile, again, this will completely collapse, and this column width of 12 is going to take over. All right, so very cool. Let's go grab our carousel component. So back over to your browser, dive back into Bootstrap, and we're going to come over to this carousel right here. So Bootstrap has a couple of different ways we can set up a carousel. All right, so you can do slides only, and this is just going to, you know, flip through the slides. They've got an option where you can have some navigation toggles right here for previous and next, and then below that they even have something with page indicators that you can click on along with the previous and next toggles there. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the second option, which just has the previous and next toggles on the side. So go ahead and copy this. We're going to throw it into our project, and then we're going to dive in under the hood exactly how we should be using this. So I'm going ahead and pasting this, and the ID on this is carousel example controls. Let's go through this carousel, clean it up, and adjust things to the way that we want it. So I'm going to put main carousel right here, and then this is a Bootstrap class, the carousel slide, and then it has this data ride of carousel, and then inside of here, this is where our images are. Okay, so we've got the carousel items, and the active state here is going to be the first slide that shows up on the web page, and then we're going to have 3 images in each of these. You can add more or less to it. I'd have a minimum of 3 in this example. I've provided enough images, you can use 3. But carousels, yeah, you should really keep it to 3 to 5 slides here. So let's go through and talk about a couple of these classes that Bootstrap has added in here. So on this image, they've put this dBlock class here, and what this is it's giving us a display of block on our image class. It makes sure that it's aligned in the center of our carousel. And then you can see that Bootstrap has added its image fluid, which is going to help it adjust as the viewport changes sizes. All right, and then this is just some alternative text if the browser can't find your image, or if it's changed locations. It's just going to display just like what we saw here, first slide. Now you can change that alternative image to whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it the same and have it say first slide, second slide, and third slide. All right, so let's go ahead and add our images in here. Now I've already gone ahead and inside the assets folder, I have resized these to work the best for us, all right, in this project. So go ahead and type in assets, and then this first one, let's see, we are going to be using, I think it was just the board here. Let me check out our project. Yeah, so it's just going to be the board, JPEG, and then in our second image, we're going to grab the, it's going to be the, where is it? This one here, the tips. I don't even know what that says, but it's the tips so larga. And then in this last one here, we're going to grab the longboard. Anybody longboard? You know, I've actually never longboarded before. I have only skated. I like to keep everything to tricks, you know? All right. Let's go ahead and refresh this and see how it looks. All right, cool. So we've got slide 1. Now notice the next and previous toggle isn't working for me, and I'll show you why. But the cool thing is that we've got all of our images set up, and they're at the proper size that we want them to be. So back into brackets, let me show you why this isn't working. All right, remember, anytime we're working with IDs, IDs should be specific, and it's a way for JavaScript to interact with your HTML. Well, guess what? Our carousel here obviously has some JavaScript behind the scenes working for us because it allows us to switch out slides. So I've changed the ID to main carousel. Go ahead and copy that. And then if we come down to the bottom of this, you can see that right underneath our last image between this list box, we've got these anchor tags that contain the previous and next buttons for our carousel. And you can see that the reference point that it's trying to hit was the original ID name of our carousel, but we changed that. So go ahead and delete that and paste in the main carousel, and then go ahead and do that on the next button. All right, so we can get rid of this and add that, and make sure that you leave the pound sign in there. That's how it's going to reference it, okay? Reference the ID. And then again, you can see that it has this SR only. So instead of having those icons there on screen readers, since those are kind of hard to see for people that may be colorblind, it's actually going to display the word previous and next for people who have the screen reader option enabled on their devices. All right, so now when we refresh this, we should have our previous and next icons working, which they do. Pretty cool, huh? All right, awesome. Now the next step in this, I want to show you how we can add text to our carousel images. When we have an image here, there might be a message that we want to portray to our visitors. So let's come back to our browser. We're going to dive into to Bootstrap here. And if we come down a little bit further, you can see that we can add captions here. So if we look at this, Bootstrap has provided a class for us called Carousel Caption. And this is going to be inserted right underneath our image. So you can actually just copy this and then come back over to brackets, and right underneath our image here, we'll just do it on the let's do it on the second slide. It's going to show up a little bit better. All right, go ahead and press enter right underneath the image right here, and then go ahead and paste that carousel caption here. And it looks like I actually forgot the closing tag on that. So add a second closing tag for the carousel, and then you'll have the closing tag for the carousel item here. And then we can go ahead and add our own text. So skate for life. All right. And then just add show me some tricks. Cool. All right, I love it. All right, so let's see how this looks and then dive in under the hood a little bit about what's happening here. So we've got our carousel, that's beautiful, and we've got some text here, which I love it. Now by default, this caption right here, it is white. If you want to override it, you can. And let's go ahead and inspect the element so we can see what kind of classes Bootstrap is adding for us. So we'll go ahead to the top here. We'll dive one deeper. Just come into the list item, since that's pretty important. The carousel item is what contains our image. So in the top here, you can see that it's given us positions. It gets rid of the display, gives us a width of 100. Sorry, this is changing here because the slides are switching up here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the captions. Let's go in here and talk about the captions. It was the second one that had this caption here. So you can see that it has this class dNone and dMD block. And what it says here is on this class, it's saying this text on any display that is medium or larger, display this text in a block so it'll show up. However, anything smaller, we want the display to be set as none. So what we're saying is when this slide gets to a mobile state, it's actually going to remove the text, because in most cases this text, this message is going to be too small as the image shrinks with the viewport when scaled. So it actually gets rid of it. Now if you want your message to always be displayed, go ahead and get rid of this dNone class right here on the caption. All right. And you can see this this class, the carousel caption. I mean, it's got positioning. padding, and then it adds the font color here. Otherwise, the default color is going to be black, which I just, well, you saw it was black if you pause the video and you look, because it's inheriting the default color of the font from the browser. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and I'm going to add one class to kind of help this carousel resize here. Let's first off see how this resizes. So as we resize this, you can see that the carousel here, the images get a little bit smashed. Now, one thing to note with the carousel in Bootstrap is it doesn't always size appropriately when you're scaling the viewport. Even though it has the image fluid on here, Bootstrap is going to do the best that it can to resize that image, but carousels aren't always going to be able to keep that aspect ratio. So what you can do to help fix this is you can actually write some media queries at different viewport widths and change the width of the carousel image to be like, instead of 100%, you can scale it down to like 70%, and maybe when it's in a mobile state, you can scale it down to a 50% width. That way you're resizing the image via CSS with these different media breaks. Now, we're not going to do that in this video, but that is something that you can do to help override the carousel and to get your images to show up a little bit more appropriately. So the only thing that's really left with this is to make sure that we break up this web page into different sections. And we're going to be doing that by adding different colored backgrounds. All right, so you can see that right now it's white, and this slide in particular really blends into the background. So let's come back over to brackets. And we've got this section, remember, that contains all of our Jumbotron text and the carousel, and we gave this a class of section light. So over here, go ahead and write in section light, and inside of this we are going to add a background color, and this is going to be ECEE. I think there's 3 E's and an F. Let's go ahead and save that, and yeah, that's a very, very light gray color. And then we want to make sure that this section just has some padding all around it, okay? So there we go. Let's go ahead and check this out and refresh it. Check that out. So now we've got a very light background, and we've got our carousel working awesomely here, and our Jumbotron text. So that wraps up this video. Let's